life they saved. Real talk, real vets, every tale's got pride. From the battlefield's edge to the home front side. Tune in, turn it up, hear the heroes speak. The Vet Files bring the truth every week. From the fight to the mic, it's a soldier's life. You're live with the Vet Files, real stories, real life. Vet Files, real stories, real life.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Vet Files. Matt Cochran here, your host, and again with us is Mr. Ken Freeney. Glad to have you again. Glad to see you above ground.
That's a good day. That is a good day.
Yeah, every day above ground's a good one, right? That's what they say.
Yeah.
No matter how bad of a day you're having, as long as it's on the other side of the grass, right?
My grandfather used to say he was reading the obituaries to make sure he wasn't in it.
Yeah, making sure. Yeah. Sometimes we were talking earlier about the VA and stuff, and sometimes I've sat there so long going to the VA trying to get in or just waiting for stuff to happen, whether it be paperwork or going there. And it's been so long, I've started looking online to see if I've had an obituary written or somebody's filed a missing person report on me.
Well, the first time I ever went to the VA, the not going to mention towns or any specific facilities because they're all different, and that's something we can talk about is how they're not always connected. Mm-hmm. But the first time I ever had any dealings with the VA, they looked at me and said, "You walked in here," and I said, "What?" It was like, "You walked in here. You're not that bad off." And I said, "I need to get an appointment. I've been trying to call." Sets me up the appointment. Dude looks at me and says, "Be 24 months out." I was like,
and that's the express lane.
Yeah. I mean, that was like, he was doing me a favor. And I was frustrated. I wound up going to a regular doctor, but, retirees could use the base hospitals at the time. They didn't have to go to the VA and stuff. They could go on post. And of course they did away with that. But anytime a veteran got out, dealing with the VA was a nightmare for a long time.
Oh yeah. We'll get into this, but my experience with the VA has been fairly good, and we'll get into that. But I've mentioned to a lot of older folks, especially my father-in-law, who he's in his 70s now. He's retired and stuff, and I'm like, you need to go register with the VA and go there and whatever. He refuses to register. He's like, that's a nightmare. I'm not going there. That's terrible. You're going to just blah. But yeah, they had a bad time with the VA back in the day.
There was a Vietnam vet that I sat through one of the classes they asked me to take, and pain management class, or preliminary to it, which it was a good class. I wish they'd have done it years ago, but anyway, he was in tears, and he told them, he said, "I wished I could have got this treatment back in the 70s. He said, he just told, he said, they wouldn't see us. He said, they've treated Vietnam vets like we didn't exist.
Right.
And there's still guys out there just now getting treated, but that shows the difference in the mentality and, how it's changed.
Yeah. Well, luckily maybe you have to, let's see, I've been going to the VA since about 2012, I think it is. So, honestly, other than, some of the bull crap that you got to go through, I've not really had that bad of a time or that horrific of an experience and stuff. But I do like to tell people, everybody trying to hit on a little bit of politics. They're like, oh, we need to have socialized medicine. The government needs to provide this, that, and the other. And I said, listen, before you form that opinion, why don't you, we already have it. It's called the VA. Why don't you go and see? That's and you can experience what government-run healthcare is like.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I learned, and this will all tie together, is what is and isn't tied together with the VA. And people say this, and the first thing I'm going to say, because I want every veteran, everybody to know, you earn the benefits, you should use them. Now, civilians think, let's say they work for a company, I won't mention no names, but they work for this big company, and they put in 20, 30 years, and the company told them you're going to get a pension, you can get medical, and blah, 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 blah. They look at us and say, well, what are you complaining about? Well, that's a tax-based thing. And well, it is, but it was still a job, and it was a promise that was made. And while we're on that subject, military members pay taxes unless they're in a war zone.
Right.
So, the expectation of what we wanted as veterans and what everybody else thinks we shouldn't get is kind of part of the problem with the VA, because it is socialized medicine, for lack of better words, and government run.
It is. But what I like to tell everybody that has it, especially the old timers and some of the ones, they're like, oh, I'll never go to the VA because that's just sucking the tit of the taxpayer, this, that, and the other. I'm like, whether you use it or not, that's up to you. But at least register, man. Just register. You never know. I said, and I was trying to tell my family member this. I was like, dude, just register because you're good right now. But something might happen and you don't have anything back to fall on. And then all of a sudden, it might not be the best system in the world, but you got something, if you register, that's going to be there to pick you up and take care of you, or, at least sustain life or something. But
all these guys that say that, I'll just look at them and say, don't use the roads. You paid taxes and you're sucking the tit of the taxpayer when you use a road. I mean, it's just the same thing. And if you paid taxes, it's like unemployment. I was taught it was bad to draw unemployment until one day a guy sat down, which was in the military, and said, when you get out, here's how much money you've paid. That is your money.
Oh, yeah.
For unemployment.
Yeah, unemployment tax. That's built in.
That's the VA benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're on it, we just keep rolling with, I guess. I think what hurts the older generation with the VA is not understanding how it works. That goes a long ways to making it function. But I found out, because the first time I dealt with the VA was 2004. As far as anything serious, I found out now that I'm actually getting benefits, and they went to this community health care so that they can get more people in. Yeah. The VA claims, the VA clinics, of course, your military side of the house, none of it's connected. They don't communicate. If you went and saw a VA clinic and said, hey, I broke my leg, this happened, they'll treat it because you're now entitled to it under the PACT Act and everything. But if you had a claim for it, they don't see that until at some point. And if you're a World War II veteran, guess what? You got out of the service, your military didn't communicate with the VA. No. Unless they know to go pull those records up.
No. Whenever, so I started after I got back from my tour in Iraq there, and that's where a lot of my stuff originated from, and had all my military records there or medical records from the Army, but they had no idea about anything. But luckily, I had a good NCO that had been around the block. He was my squad leader, and he told me, and he had been through a bunch of stuff, and he's smart in a lot of ways, and then other ways he wasn't quite that smart. But one of the things he told me, he says, Mr. Cochran, you need to keep a record of everything. Make a copy of everything. And luckily, I heeded that advice. And every time I'd go to the TMC or whatever, and I made sure I kept a copy of that, because I'm in the middle of a war zone. How, they're going to lose those electronic files when they come home. So,
even paper files. I mean, back when we were in, there was paper files, and getting copies of them when they did them in triplicate and quadruplicate and double triplicate, backdated and dotted the T's and crossed the I's, it was all on paper. Lose that folder, and guess what? You just destroyed one of the main copies of your records.
Yeah, you sure did. So, what was speaking of, since we're on the VA? So, what we'll try to lighten the mood a little bit, right? So, what was one of your funniest things that ever happened to you at the VA?
Oh,
if there is one.
Sometimes you look back and what was a pain in the butt back then.
Right.
I guess funny at the VA would be the whole process. You get so frustrated, you start laughing at it.
Right.
I've seen, I won't say funny, but enjoyable part of the VA was the old timers sometimes.
Yeah.
Going there in the World War II vets and, right. Vietnam vets that are in there, and they've got their old stories that they tell, and they want somebody to listen.
Right.
But I say funny because for me it was funny in a morbid way, so don't want nobody to take this wrong. But I go in there this time around to apply. I reapplied for everything, and they called me. They called me pretty quick, and they said, "Sir, your file should have been taken care of a long time ago. We need to get you in here. You got some problems." So, you got a lot of new people in the VA right now because of the 2014 incident with the VA and stuff, and won't get down in the weeds, but there was, the VA got in a lot of trouble with appointments and things. They got rid of some people. They hired some people. So these people do the checklist as we were talking earlier, and they can't go forward till the next one.
Yeah.
So she's going down the checklist and she asked me a question, and you can tell the computer processes all the answers because it'll go to the next one. So how many head injuries, and she asked, and I tell her, did you have any more than this? And I tell her, did you have any more than this? And I tell her. Finally, just on head injuries and back, the computer locks up. And she looks at me and starts crying. And I'm like, you okay? And she goes, how are you still alive? And leaves the room. And I'm like,
why are you not a vegetable?
Yeah. And the other lady comes in and says, well, basically you have to do this. It's going through the process. And she was so upset. And I'm like, look, I mean, you got to think cumulative, the stuff we did isn't like working at Walmart. I mean, you fall out back with deuce and a half, or you parachute, you bang your head, you get drugs, you box. I mean,
just riding in the military vehicle, even if you got a Kevlar on, you're bopping back and forth.
When we forget about training, you train like it's combat, and I was explaining this to her, and she goes, I guess we don't really think about it like that. I mean, it's whether it's combat or not, you're training like it's combat. I dove across a doorway one time and my weapon caught something, jammed it back in my face, and all my gear, pack, and everything come down. And that's why I had to have nose surgery years later to breathe. And, that's just a trip up in training, as we talk about. It's not always perfect. but to me, that was kind of funny that they don't think of the job they have and what they're dealing with.
So yeah, you're right about the training. They don't realize that is like you. What do they say in sports? Is you practice like you're going to play or something like that.
And that's training in the military. You run it. Well, you remember what they used to tell you: crawl, walk, run. And that's your training. And when you get up to running, we're going to do it 3/4 speed, and then you start hitting the full speed. And if you survive, you get to go do bigger and better things.
Yeah. People used to ask me all the time, what's it like to be in the military or this, and, just curious. And I came up with an example of like, okay, a civilian example. I said, okay, so if you're in your house and you see a light bulb that's out, you just automatically jump up there and change the light bulb, put a new one in, and it's done. In the military, if that light bulb is out, first you get all the commanders together. They come together and formulate a plan. They hook up with supply to make sure that they have that light bulb. Then they get with the NCOs. Then you have to do a dry run, practice run of that, changing that light bulb. And then you come back and then you do another run of that. And then eventually after 5 times, you'll get to change that light bulb.
Yeah. And then you have to have the country singer singing about missing the old light bulb.
And tie a yellow ribbon around that old oak tree and stuff. Yeah, you train hard and stuff. In basic even, they have the Nick at Night course. Do you remember the Nick at Night course?
Yeah.
It's night infiltration course. And that's a live fire exercise. You're low crawling across 3 football fields under barbed wire where some dudes in a gun tower firing 50 cal rounds, live rounds over your head.
And that's what prepped you for war. And, it's, you're low crawling in sand with your gear on, you're dragging a weapon. We figured it up one day when you lock on the traverses with the M60 and you step on that log, that's the infiltration course, and there's logs that are half buried so people don't know. But if a 6-foot person is standing on top of that log, the firing rate was 1.5 feet above their head. That's where it's locked in at.
Right.
but nobody is to be standing on that course. But if they do happen to jump up and run, they'd have to jump off the log to get hit. And then the
And
pits
there's
have
been
C4.
instances where people's been killed. Trainees have been killed like that in live fire.
And
Yeah, even
of course
in base.
now,
So now we went down another rabbit hole.
yeah.
So-
well, people's going to hear that and go, "Oh my God, they use live rounds." But and that's part of back to the VA. And there was a congressman years ago, probably before you got in the service, Matt. But anyway, he stood before Congress talking about the benefits, an old Southern gentleman, if you will. And I remember him clear as a bell. He said the problem with it is we didn't expect nobody to stay in long enough or live long enough to use the benefits.
Yeah.
He said
it's sort of like Social Security, right?
Yeah.
You die out before you get to draw.
Well, and he told them, he said, when we approved these, and he admitted, I was one of the originals, after World War II and all this, he said, we approved all of it thinking we was going to have a core military that would stay for a career, and we'd always backfill with reserves and National Guard, go to war, come home, go to war, come home. And he said, we didn't expect people to live that long to have to pay all this out. Excuse me. Part of that desert phlegm thing that I have going on all the time. But they never grew either. And I could put it in the best context. You're talking about civilians. If you want to know why the VA is like it is, we haven't built an oil refinery in the United States of America since 1976. But the growth outside has just kept going and going and going, and we're trying to supply that with gas, diesel, and everything else. The VA has just now started growing. I mean, they just now approved community care where a civilian doctor could treat you and you could go get a claim and they say, okay, Matt Cochran is a leg doctor and he's 30 miles from you. Use him. Don't drive to Nashville or Colorado. That's just now becoming.
Yeah, and that's what I use here because where I live at, it's just a clinic. I was used to Fortunately, where we lived at, we had the hospital VAs, and it had everything there, and whether good or bad, it was. You could just walk down the hall. They say, "Hey, you need this." You just walk down the hall and go get your MRI or whatever it is that same day. But here, I have used the local hospital basically for everything that I've needed to do in that community care. And that's huge because if I didn't, I would either be driving an hour and a half, I think is the closest one to me, the next VA hospital. And then the next one would be over back in the area where I used to live near you, which would be almost 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Do that. So, but let me, we're talking about funny stories about the VA. My first experience with the VA is I signed up and I went to go see my primary care, and it's a lot like going to see your new doctor, right? Your new patient, you check in. Civilian doctor. He was a good doctor. So I'm about, gosh, how old am I at this time? I'm about 38, 39, somewhere around there. So he's doing the checkup, whatever, routine stuff. So he wants to do the hernia check. I'm like, cool. All right, whatever. I understand that, first time. Then he says, okay, during that visit, says, well, we need to go ahead and do a prostate check. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I was like, I don't really, all right, whatever. So I went and did that. So then I had a follow-up. He says, you need to come back and whatever. So every time I went back to this doctor, I don't know if I want to admit this or not. Every time he wanted to do a hernia check and a prostate exam. I'm like, I understand. He's like, he would tell me every time, he says, you wouldn't believe how many prostate exams I do and how much cancer I find. And I'm like, are you sticking your finger in people's asses all day? Is that what you want to do? I said, I'm fairly young man. I know I'm sort of on that, whatever, but you just did this last week.
Yeah, he found his niche and happy with it, huh?
Yeah, I'm like, man, I'm going to start calling you Dr. Ass Man.
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and that's, and unfortunately, those are the doctors we get in the VA sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's and a lot of people probably sitting out there going, oh my God. And we're like, yeah, whatever. It's part of it. I mean, we were talking about the checklist earlier, you know, how they got a systematic checklist they have to answer before they can move on.
Mm-hmm.
In your experience so far, not one doctor this time around in the last 3 or 4 years has done a hernia check or a prostate exam on me.
Wow.
Yeah. But I did have, through a civilian doctor, I'd had a colonostomy and a couple other things. So those records now, the VA actually pulls them in. Used to be, well, with the VA, we don't want to listen to what Dr. Cochran had. I'll come off of it. Goober.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty good. I mean, I think I saw a big change, so when I started going in 2012 or what have you, it was pretty good. I was pleased with it. It all depends on what you go your expectations, right? If you have no expectations, you can never be disappointed, right? So that's sort of the way I went in with it, and I was kind of pleased with it. But I tell you, I saw a big change in the VA when Trump was in. As far as care, we're going to get these guys in, because right before he came in, and this is not about politics, I'm just looking at this from my experience and or whatever, but I know you remember how that they were just taking all the vets and stuff, and the ambulances was lined up, and they were trying to pad their numbers.
Yeah.
They wouldn't let them in the emergency room, because as soon as they came in the emergency room, the clock started ticking, and and that all kind of changed, and I saw a big change there, and I hope it kind of stays. I mean, the VA has a lot of disadvantages or negative things that's happening, but I have seen some positive things that's happened.
Yeah.
For the VA. It's sort of like when you have a kid that goes around and is like Ernest T. Bass, and he's breaking windows and throwing rocks at everywhere. And then all of a sudden he decides not to throw rocks anymore, but he's still a little mischievous, right?
Yeah.
But it's that little bit of improvement.
Well, and part of it is, I'm going to step to the one side or the other. People complain about the VA, but don't use the VA. They'll if you get down into the weeds, you'll find out they've never went past a phone call, and they've just ended right there.
Right.
Because I've had good and bad experiences, not just with the VA, but everywhere else. And like you said, you go in there and you have expectations of something. I don't set any higher expectations of the VA than I do my local doctor, but I will say this. The VA system, I don't wait more than 10 or 15 minutes past appointment time, but this highly paid doctor down here I have to see, that mofo, an hour past time and I'm ticked off.
Right.
So
and then you get in there and you get 10 minutes, maybe. And
they're like, you need to get in and get out. At least with the VA, there's a lot of veterans in there and they understand now. It's growing and there's a lot of positive to it. And you have to take the negative at face value and make sure it's not a person that just hates life, because there are people that have problems. Vietnam vets, a lot of people have problems with it. There's a group out there that are miserable no matter what. And, like MEPS. If you went to MEPS station, we talk about how everything's not connected, but it is.
Before you start on MEPS, though, now we might have some folks watching. Explain what MEPS is.
Military entrance processing. That's when you first enlist and the recruiter drives you down there and it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to go get McDonald's. Have a nice day.
Also, that's where you have to do the duck walk and the bend over, spread your cheeks.
Yeah.
Check your butthole.
Give your oath and everything else. That's when they walk you through that Louisville or Nashville, wherever you went, and they say, okay, he's healthy. He lived up to his end. Let's give him his job. Let's try to cheat him out of his job. Let's put him out there in the real world of the military.
That's where you make the real deal with the devil.
Yeah. I got even with one of those guys years later though. And I'll tell that after I finish this part. But when you go to MEPS and you process, they ask you all these questions. When you leave the military, they'll ask you a lot of those same questions again. And a lot of people don't want to be hurt. I'm good. I did my 15, 20 years and nothing wrong with me. Well, that goes to the VA. This non-connected system will eventually get that. And then they'll look at it and say, well, he said you got hurt. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, now they cipher through it and they realize that, a lot of guys were pushed out because the doctor at the base didn't care. He just wanted to process you and get you out. If you got less problems, he get you out the door quicker and a cleaner sheet. Well, but they go back and look at your records and say, well, why didn't you tell them you had a broke leg? Well, I did, but the doctor, and they're like, okay. So they're getting better at that disconnect and fixing it. But none of it's connected. But those documents you talked about that you kept, that's the connection that brings it all full circle.
Or what the VA likes to call the nexus.
Yeah. Hey, wasn't there a Nova Cloud or something in Star Trek called the Nexus?
It probably was.
William Shatner got trapped in it forever.
Maybe he was trying to go through the VA. He's trying to get a Starfleet VA claim done. But yeah, you got to prove the nexus.
Yes. And
the nexus.
I will say that part's gotten easier. I helped
with the PACT Act, it has.
Well, and the PACT Act has helped. And, we give we give too much credit to politicians, but I will say what has helped all this stuff more than anything, in my opinion, it's not a Trump, Biden, Bush, none of the presidents as much as the VFW, the American Legion,
right,
the Wounded Warrior Program, and a lot of these agencies that have dug their heels in and got in there and fought and said, hey, these guys need help. These VSOs. I cannot say enough about my veteran service officer.
Awesome. They are awesome. I have used it. I'm getting ready to make an appointment. Since I moved, I had to get a new VSO, and I haven't been down to the next one. And I mentioned earlier that I had all those 15, 20-page letters for this that I don't understand it, but I'm going to take them down there, and they'll be like, let me take care of this for you. I've got it. And there's no there's no monetary enticement for them to make money off of your claim if you do, because they're paid by the county or the state or whoever it is, but they're there to serve you, and they are the most awesome ones. Because I see all these commercials all the time. It's like, hey, call this lawyer and we'll make sure you get your 100% claim or this. And they more than likely can, but a lot of people don't realize they're going to take 30% of that claim that you're getting at that point. And so go to your VSO. They're just as good as the lawyer. They know the system. And that's the key to the VA, I think, and the things that I've learned. And maybe that's what's kind of made me feel it's a slight, I don't want to say easy, but easier, is that I've learned myself and done my own research about how the VA operates and sort of the loopholes that you go through and have to go through, and not expect your expectations are low. And then if you do this, but if you educate yourself, you use these resources in your VSO or your, like you mentioned, the VFW or the American Legion, which I'm a Legionnaire, they have them built in. It's everywhere. They're going to help you. People that are experts in this system.
And that's, you wouldn't go to a business and run your business, say, I don't know, plug a company, Caterpillar, and run bulldozers and things like that, and then go hire a doctor from a local hospital to fix it. You'd go to the expert that knows the inner workings of the system and the company, which is generally one of their facilities. So I don't understand why people don't want to use the VSOs, because this one that we have here, and Miss Allen, she's great. I called the other day with a problem and said, what do I need to fill out? She goes, done. I filled it out for you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, you just sign over a power of attorney, limited power of attorney. They sign your name. They do everything for you. And by the way, let's go back to, because I know that we're talking a lot of acronyms and stuff, but for, again, folks that might not know or watching, a VSO means Veteran Service Officer. That's in your community. They're pretty much in every county that you look at. Not every county, but I'd say 90% of your counties has a VSO.
And plus you got your VFW and American Legion that have volunteers that get nothing but to walk you to those people. That's what they do. I mean, some of them retired, some of them or whatever, they show up. And, there's a lot of civilians employed in this system as well. that are married to veterans.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one episode, I think we'll talk about maybe some base life and stuff and how the dependents fall into this.
Right.
But, you know, there's a lot out there for our families now that we didn't have before, and they can work with this. I mean, one of the things the VSO is doing for us right now is just some stuff for my wife, because she's got some entitlements I didn't know about. And she puts up a lot of stuff that, you know, she wasn't there for the ride for. You know, she's inherited it with me. So
Right.
It's
And the dependents are a big deal. You know, I could speak for myself as some of the issues that I've been through and have been dealing with. You know, my wife has dealt with it also. She wasn't directly there, but she's indirectly there.
Yeah.
And
you know, and I think
it's sort of like whenever you shoot, what was it they said? Whenever you shoot an RPG or something, practice back blast clear or something like that. She's in the back blast.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, when you're down on the floor and can't get up, who's there to pick you up? You know, is it your wife, your kids? It's not these people that judge on the outside. You know what I mean?
Right.
They have to deal with all those injuries that, well, you know, people get hurt at work all the time. Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't have a lot
and
of
we
baggage.
saw that where me and you worked at it. We won't mention that name, but we saw injuries all the time that happened like that. Like not minor cut my little finger, got a paper
injuries.
cut kind of injury that put them out of work and they had to have a spouse there to help them.
Mm-hmm. And you know, when you're dealing with a system that won't help you, like the VA for years, these Vietnam vets, a lot of World War II vets, you know, the spouses were there to pick up the pieces, literally. I mean, and you get such a wide range of all this, and excuse me, they go underrated and underappreciated when it comes to the VA and stuff like that. And the VA is starting to recognize that now. I mean, one of the things I got asked the other day that's never been asked before, if we need to, do you have anybody that we can have help with your, you know, with your claims and your medical and stuff? They actually bring them into it, have classes about how to deal with us as veterans, right. Because I don't know about you, but one of the biggest things that pisses me off is get over it. I'll get over it when I'm damn good and ready to get over it. Teaching them. Yeah. And, you know, the whole process has changed, and I think it's for the better.
Yeah.
I really do. Did you have a lot of family in the military prior to you?
Well, I'm sort of like Lieutenant Dan. Let me hit the lineage real quick. All right. So it goes back to the Civil War, and then a great uncle in World War I, and then another great uncle in World War II, grandpa in World War II, other grandpa in Korea, uncle in Vietnam, brother in Bosnia, and then it brings up to me. So I had a few.
Yeah. See, and I'm duplicate of that, just different family members. Like my dad was a Vietnam veteran, one of my uncles, my grandfather's World War II. And you know that now I understand a lot of the family problems and the VA issues that we talk about, because I see my grandfather in me. And my wife said something one day, well, you don't like to talk about this, and you just need to word vomit when you go in the VA and let them sort it out. And, you know, my grandfather, I understand how he was now, why he sat in the car and didn't go in the grocery store. I literally understand that mentality now. And I'm sure my grandmother, you know, things she used to say, I hear my wife saying it now, and I'm like, damn.
Yeah.
It's legit.
And it's a shame too. I'll use you talk about how the resources have changed versus back in let's say even Korea or in Vietnam and that from the VA. So I had one of my maternal grandfather, Harley Rufus, fought in Korea, lost both legs over there. He was a member of the VA, and of course they took care of him. He was, you know, as much as possible. But they didn't take care. They took care of him physically. They didn't take care of him mentally, and he ended up dying. He became, after that, from losing his legs, his experience overseas, he became a severe alcoholic, and he actually died from it at the age of about 42 years old.
Yeah.
I think I was like 2 or 3 years old when that happened. But, they, again, if it doesn't bleed, it doesn't lead, right?
Yeah.
And that's the mentality has kind of changed, especially since, it didn't change through Vietnam because those guys really need some mental health. But the 20 years of war in Iraq, Afghanistan, OEF, and OIF, I think they started recognizing that, these guys are coming back. We can do things on the battlefield and save them now physically.
Yeah.
But mentally, we got to do something else.
And, and that's a good point you bring up when you're dealing with the VA and everything. They are an aftercare deal. They're not there during the injuries. They're not there during the scenarios that bring this up, whether it's training or whether you was at base housing and fell through the roof, whatever happened, none of this VA and those people are there. It's a self-contained, take care of ourselves on that post,
Right.
medical, all that. So the VA is for lack of better words, they're a cleanup organization right now.
Right.
Mental health, physical health, surgeries, things like that. And they weren't capable of handling it, especially when Desert Storm got done and Afghanistan, all these operations we've had. There's been some very, very serious stuff brought down the pipes, and some of it's unexplainable. They've had a hard time explaining the issues, the breathing, and the Desert Shield, Desert Storm. How many times did a veteran get told they was crazy and a lunatic? And because, I hurt. Well, no, you don't. You don't hurt. You're just making that up. Because they didn't know. Those people really did not understand. And these doctors from the MASH units, if you want to call them that, and different organizations, they were telling the VA, hey, I was there. I saw what happened. Well, he's not sick now. Yeah, he is. And,
Right.
It's led to this fibromyalgia and just different things they talk about that I read up because I'm always reading, and this whole disconnect is starting to come together and make a connect. Unfortunately, it's too late for a lot of people. It's way too late for a lot of people. And I hate that. But as we used to say, if a person makes a difference, Matt, whether it's one time in his life, he makes a good difference. It's a value. I
totally agree. I guess I have mixed feelings about the VA, and we kind of touched on this earlier. Is like we all know, and a lot of old timers out there, they know the VA had its downfalls, but I've seen some changes. I myself, and I'm speaking for myself out there, if any of you other vets have had nightmares, right? I have not had really, I'd say I've had one bad experience with the VA. And that experience is whenever I moved recently and I had to go from the VA hospital, had excellent primary care doctors, whatever, to a clinic. And the clinic doctor that they assigned me to was a retired Marine doctor, and totally different for me. He was still in that mindset of you're not bleeding, you're not hurting kind of thing. Suck it up. I don't care kind of thing. And just being I didn't want him to fluff my bum. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it was totally different between him and the civilian doctors that I had in the VA system.
Well, and I agree with you. I don't want the fluff. I want somebody that understands the problems when you go to the VA. I don't need the sympathy and the all that fluffy crap, but I do want somebody to take the time and say, now I did something this time and everybody thought I was a lunatic. When I went to the VA clinic this time, they had a brand new doctor there. I mean, hadn't even done in processing.
Right.
I've been waiting 2 months for this damn appointment. And the doctor I'm supposed to see sends her in because he's busy. I was like, kind of irritated because I've been waiting 2 months. This is my time, your time. You're supposed to be here. So I talked to her. When I went out front, I asked them to switch my doctors for the appointment. Dude, the number of people that came out to find out if I had a problem, they were so upset. And I said, look, guys, I'm not upset. I said, but I waited 2 months for this appointment. I just told this lady a history of years because he was too busy. I want her. I don't want to, because I don't like repeating myself over and over and over. So they said, okay. And I told her this, and I told her up front, I said, one of the reasons that I want this change, you're new to the VA. You're fresh out of the Navy. You're new to the VA. And I expect from you as my doctor not to process me like a cow. And it showed up. You showed up, he didn't. And she thinks she actually learns the system though, Matt. And she says, look, we can't do this because the VA step says you can't do this, you can't have this until this is done. But here's what we can do. Right. And she reads the other doctor's notes. Mm-hmm. She brings that connection because she really, starting out, probably got one of the worst cases she doesn't need. But that was one of the things for me went different this time. I took more interest in my health care than listening to sit down and say, hey, I waited 2 months. This SOB didn't have time to see me after 2 months. The hell with him. Give me her.
Well, you had a better experience than I did. But so I went to this new doctor recently. Well, it's been almost a year now. So I just knew that me and him were not going to hit it off. You know, this was just too much. I felt like a recruit again.
Yeah.
And so I called and I said, listen, I just want to switch doctors. And they're like, okay, cool. You can do that. But first of all, you've got to go see him for exactly 1 year. After that, then you got to fill out this form. It can take 60 to 90 days to process this form. And then we can see if that form has been approved. And then maybe we can find you another doctor in that clinic that will accept you.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Oh, and I know where you're coming from because even with my doctor now, when I need to see her like rapido, like now, I still have to wait a couple of weeks because they got her booked out a year in advance. And making that change is not easy, but and you hit on something there like a raw recruit, you know, from day one. Reminds me of all this stuff we're talking about. And then later on in life, you get reintroduced to some of this. You know, some of us fools got out and went back in. I had to go back to MEPS and process with a bunch of high schoolers and people just out. So,
and they're looking at you like, what's this old man doing?
Yeah. Well, this recruiter that I knew, I told him, I said, look, I'm sick of the civilian life. I hate these fools. I need to get out of here. And he said, dude, you can go back in anytime you want. I was like, no, you know, long story short. So he said, let's go to MEPS. I'll get your paperwork done, stamped, all that. We'll go up to MEPS. We'll go to Hooters, have some lunch and stuff when you're done. So we drive up to MEPS, get up there in the morning, and that bus drives up and they're dropping. I'm sitting over there like, damn. You know, memories are swirling. And it's the same building. Now I got to back up. This is the same building I processed in when I was 18. To go. And I ain't so sure this guy's ass I got into wasn't the same guy, but this is where the story's going. So, you know, me and him's been drinking coffee, doing the stuff we do. These guys are coming out of a hotel because they took them down there the night before. And I walk up and I'm like, pardon me, where's the latrine head, whatever you're going to call it these days? This dude throws his hands up and goes, GD, here we go. It's already started. You boys going to go to the bathroom and urinate, you bunch of little piss pots. And he points and I went, whoa, wait a minute. I said, you are addressing Staff Sergeant. And I commenced to ripping on his ass and I was backing him up to the wall. And I'm like, you better change that effing attitude. I expect a little respect. I want somebody off at third floor's ass down here right now because I ain't putting up with this bullshit. And dude, I thought he was going to cry. And I hear, Sergeant, And I turn around, there's this guy in scrubs. He's a sergeant first. He said, "Come on, man, let's get you in here before you kill one of these security guards." And went in and processed and was going up the stairs. And he looked at me and goes, "You just enjoyed the hell out of that, didn't you?" I said, "Yeah, I did."
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Paybacks are a mother, you know. And,
oh yeah. Maps is a crazy thing.
And you know, those are times that aren't tied to the VA that, you know, when I went back, they looked at my injuries at MEPS and said, "Why haven't you got this treated?" And I said, "Well, if I got it treated, you wouldn't take me back."
Right.
And I want to address that with the VA and these guys out here. Have you seen the movie Dog?
I don't think I have. Is that the one you were telling me about Channing Tatum or something? Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that said to him, and he looked at them, and I'm summing it up because I'm not going to do a direct quote, but he said in the movie, he said, "Y'all all have head injuries and concussions and stuff." And the dude looked at him and said, "Yeah, but none of them are documented." And that's fine, because we were taught our entire lives in the military, push forward, keep going. Yeah. You know, pain keeps you alive, all this. A lot of stuff doesn't get documented, and later on in life, you'll pay the cost.
That's right. Document. And I think, too, it goes back in our generation, at least whenever I grew up playing sports from the time I was 7 years old, playing football through high school. And it didn't matter if your arm got cut off. The coach would just look at you and say, "Spit on it, put some dirt on it, and get back in there." You know, shut up. And I don't know if it's just our generation, and the military reinforces that, just to say, "Shut up. If you're hurt, you're weak." Yeah. And a lot of people did that.
I'll tell you something that a lady at the VA told me, and I appreciate her saying it. She was a nurse. She said that we were just having this kind of discussion me and you were having. And she said the problem with a lot of it is we tell people that we want them to get treated and we want them to get help. But when they do, they get treated different. We want the people on the white horse that save us. But when they show any weakness, then we look down on them. And she said her family was that way. You know, they grew up on a farm, and that was the mentality back then. I mean, and you can see the change there, even in the recruits, who's capable and incapable. You know, when I went in, if you brought 200 people into boot camp, you had 150, 160 that could shoot a rifle. Probably 120 of them could hit the target the first time around. Now those numbers are flipped. These kids understand PlayStations, but you don't have as many. I mean, we went in 20, 30 push-ups. No problem. You got kids go in now.
10 push-ups, maybe.
And they're whining. I started to see that transition when I was a drill sergeant. I was like, holy crap, you know? And this goes back to this VA talk we're having. If you played high school football, like you said, and you broke your arm, if the military accepted you, that injury is not a claim against the high school, but later on, when you re-break it, they've accepted you. They've brought you into the fold. They've had you do the push-ups. They've had you do all this. And people's like, well, you know, they want to, because I broke it in high school. No, it got worse in the military. Once they brought you through that MEPS and said, "Hey, Matt, you know, we've blessed off on you. You're entitled to this stuff and you need to use it." It's kind of where I'm headed with that.
And I think a lot of people, I think that's the biggest thing is that I see is that people, you know, even some of the people that I know served around earlier than me. So, like, I have a good friend. He served right out of high school. Went in 91, 82nd Airborne, 4 years, right? Knee injuries, right, from jumping. He finally, I talked him into a few years back because he was having knee problems. I said, the knee problems come from jumping out of an airplane all the time, probably. Yeah. And he went and filed, and they gave him like 10%. And he accepted that. But now he's having even more knee problems from that same knee and whatever that they wrote off. I said, man, you need to go back and file for an increase and this. He says, I can't do that. He says, I can't just take, I wasn't in a war zone. I just did my time. I did this. And I go up there and I see all these veterans that are in wheelchairs and they can't do all this. I said, sorry, I said, man, those guys that are in wheelchairs are probably 70 to 80 years old. And the reason they're in a wheelchair is because they're old. You know, I said, you served your time, whether you were in wartime, didn't matter, man. Wasn't your fault there wasn't nothing going on during that time. You train like you fight.
You know, and I'm glad you brought that up because like the show you've been doing, I'm glad that we talk about things other than combat oriented heroes, so to speak, that everybody in the military is a part of that machine. Okay. Whether you were training, instructor, cook, supply, weapons expert, whatever it was, Green Beret, SEAL, all that. A lot of what goes on today only wants to focus on the trauma, the real sad crap, you know, and the heart pulling strings and the fact that always 82nd Airborne and 101st and every job, whether it's military or not, you hit the nail on the head. A cop's going to go get his benefit. A fireman, somebody that works where we used to work, they're going to get their benefits. They're going to want them. You work down here at Walmart. When you're going to want your benefits. You're going to use them. And this is what amazes me about what you just said. Those same people, and probably the guy you're talking about, if he wanted a new truck, he would jump through hoops and fight the paperwork to get that new truck, but won't take care of his own health. I was that way for a long time and wasn't seeing what it was doing to my family, you know, having a hard time getting out of the tub and having to get help, you know. That's somebody that's working in the house doing something that's got to stop what they're doing to come pull your dead ass out of the tub or help you get out of a chair or watching you get sicker. You know, and I'll admit I have to carry an inhaler right now and I'm having a hard time getting around, but they're watching this. And because we're stubborn to go get help, we're putting them through misery. And I'm having to make that adjustment in my life. And I understand what you're talking about, him. But Matt, I don't care if it's National Guard, Reserves, or whatever. You did your part. It doesn't matter if you have hashes on your sleeves or not, how much fruit salad's up here. You served. You get your stuff because it was promised.
You put yourself out there. You're the 1%er. You know, they talk about the 1%ers being rich. The true 1%ers are the ones that serve. And I heard somebody say a long time ago, and it makes a lot of sense. It says, somebody told me, it says, son, you get paid the same marching as you do fighting. Mm-hmm. You know, it's the same. You put, whenever you join the military, and this is what I tried to tell my friend, whenever you join the military, no matter what time of conflict or no conflict, you're still writing that check. It says payable up into my life.
Yeah.
And
didn't mean to interrupt you there. I think we're having the same.
That was it.
But yeah, you know, I went in the mess hall one time with a guy, and we had been out in the field, and we was tired and worn out. And we sat down, and he was a grumpy little butthead for his age. And he looked at the cook and goes, "Look at that! Look at that! He ain't nothing, just a damn cook." And he was mad at everybody about being in the field, and he had a rough time in the field because we kept picking on him and. You know, one of those deals. Right. He just was mad. And I said, dude, who's smarter, you or him? He goes, well, I got a job, you know, blah, 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 blah. I said, you got bragging rights. That's all you fucking got. Mm-hmm. I said, he is an E5, you're an E5. What? I said, y'all make the same rate of pay. Yeah. I said, if he's married, got dependent, make the same rate of pay. I said, he is over there cooking. I said, he didn't do no FTX this week, but you did. I was saying, when you get right down to it, you know, who's the idiot? Who's the
right? And then you can use that same example as like, excuse me, yeah, you were out doing FTX, but did you eat during that FTX?
Yeah.
You have any hot chow? Yeah, you had some MREs, but did they bring out the mermites? Had some good eggs.
Yeah. What about the clothes on your back, shoes on your feet?
Right.
You know, right. And not that the system's perfect. Don't get me wrong, but every one of those guys hurt their backs carrying stuff. They had packs. A lot of them had weapons. A lot of them went to the field. this mentality of, well, unless you were just get past it, guys. If you, and I was one of them that, I had some training injuries, not even mentioning in country injuries, from deployments and stuff,
Right.
but just normal day to day training injuries that would I've been doing that had I not been in the military, I doubt I would have gotten blown off an embankment by a improvised device, one of our training devices that tore my leg up, and I fell 20 feet and landed on my back on a tree root.
Yeah. It's sort of like me is I doubt in civilian life that I would have allowed somebody to spray about, it felt like 3 gallons of OC spray in my face, in my eyes, and make me run an obstacle course with people attacking.
Hey, you got to test the chemicals, brother.
And I mean, hey, oh, and that's a funny. I'm going to divert to that real quick. When we went through that OC stuff, they spray you, whatever you go through, and then they bring you back to this decontamination zone. Man, that was worse than anything I ever saw. Everybody was there wailing. It was like wailing and gnashing of teeth. The chaplain was around praying over people. They were like, "Oh God." Well, that was one of the funniest. Anyway, sorry.
Well, and it's we can laugh about some of it now, but back then, people, how many guys did you meet younger go through that? It didn't bother me, and they'll tell people on the street and you're sitting there going, "Yeah, you cried like a bitch, like the rest of us. You you took it. It hurt, and get over it.
I was older when I went through it, and I don't care how old you are or young. I'm gonna tell you, I wasn't afraid to admit that shit hurt, and for days later.
But it goes back to filing those claims too, Matt. People don't want to admit that they had any weakness, and they get to this point in life where whether that adversely affected you or not, you have to be strong enough to laugh at it and say, okay, and I'm still learning that right now with some of my injuries. I don't want to admit that I can't do certain things, but I look back and think every 4 years, privates cry like a bitch when they go through the house, they go through this, they go through the infiltration range you were talking about earlier. It's explosives go off and the bullets are flying. They think in their head, and now you have video that, oh yeah, I'm a hero. I did that. No, you didn't. You froze. Drill sergeants were yelling at you, move. We had one that run into the log. He was low crawling, and his legs were kicking. He's going nowhere because his Kevlar is hitting the log, and he's just digging in.
You look like one of those water turtles on the beach getting ready to lay.
Yeah. Then when he got done, we run down there and asked him, how'd you do? Oh, it was awesome, drill sergeant. I flew right through it. No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. No.
But and that's kind of where we're at right now with what you're talking about. So many veterans don't want to admit it, and they didn't want to talk about it because I'm gonna call it out. You got medical physicals, which is disabilities, loss of leg, loss of arms, amputees, adaptive sports, have come into play with a lot of this. But then you've got the mental health, you've got the overall stress of a job that goes 20 years at such a high speed tempo. And I don't know. It's you were with the MP Corps, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so you know what I'm talking about, that stress that comes with the job every day. You have military jobs. I have a friend of mine did an entire career with MWR.
Disclaimer.
Oh.
Yeah. Not Garrison and Popo.
Oh, okay.
we did detainee ops and combat and peace stuff. We weren't your local Garrison.
Well, but the job was the same. It's an MP, but you train. And what I was going to go at is this friend of mine. He did his whole career on one post for MWR, passing out basketballs. Okay, he was the fitness guy, and he managed to finagle and get his 20 years that way. And you being with an MP company, 19 or 20, they complete boot camp. They go to AIT, they get their weapons, they start doing these jobs, and for the entire time they do it, they're carrying more responsibility than the average Joe in the civilian world does for that same deal. Now, law enforcement's law enforcement to some extent. I won't take nothing away from civilian cops because it is getting more like a combat zone for them. But trying to switch that mentality between being military police garrison and then going to a combat zone and having to deal with that, security police guarding aircraft versus, patrolling a combat zone. There's so much in 20 years with your job that changes. That it's just such a high impact. Infantry, mechanics, whatever it is, it's 20 years of a very structured and fast-paced life. And even if you did 4, heaven help you because you didn't have time to make any adjustments. You got thrown to the wolves and pulled out of the wolves.
Yeah. And heaven help you, especially if you did 4 or 6, 20, whatever, coming back out and then going to a regular job. And then you go from 130 miles an hour down to about 45. Mm-hmm. You're like,
and I think it's real hard on the 4-year enlistments. I do, because they don't have time to equate anything. They don't have time to get to that senior ability and say, okay, I'm toning down, at least tone down a little bit. Whereas, the
4 years is balls.
And you're out. And let's face it, I don't know about you, but when I came through, we were just starting to get some out processing, like, hey, you're unemployment. You need to draw that. Don't just jump into any job. They had just started some of that. But for the most part, hey, thank you, get out. They couldn't process you out fast enough.
Yeah, that's crazy. So we gotta wrap things up, but we've hit on a lot of topics, but mainly the VA today. And I really think that, people and veterans really need to, if you've served, you need to at least, dear Lord, it's easy these days. Just go to the va.gov website. I don't know where the link is, but it's there. Just sign up, register for something, and just have it. I mean, it's there for you. It's a benefit. And then again, your VSOs and things like that. So
there is so many people out there willing to help them, Matt. There's like you said, the VSOs, the American Legions, the Veterans of Foreign Wars. I'm going to add to what you said and say, don't go to all these fly-by-night lawyers and stuff. Oh, come here and see us and get your benefit. There's people out there that doesn't cost you a dime. They're already paid through your taxes or other stuff. Use them. Get these benefits, guys, because they're deserving, for one. If you don't use it, you lose it. And healthcare.
Definitely.
We're entitled to healthcare that we screened for years. You shouldn't have to retire from a job to get healthcare. Now we got it. People, I don't want to take that. Well, we fought for it. We need to get it.
You say use it or lose it. You're right. So if you have that mindset of like, I don't want to register, I don't want to do it, and they start seeing the decrease in numbers in the VA, well, the decrease in numbers means the decrease in funding for the VA.
Yeah.
So you kind of think about that, and there is no shame in doing this at all. Like I said, it's there. Just register. Whether you use it or not, that's up to you. But it's there for you to do it. Like you said, VFW, American Legion, your VSOs, va.gov. I mean, you can call the VA and they'll hook you up with a VSO, or they have their own VSOs there.
And
so it's there.
Excuse me, I'm bad about interrupting you today. I apologize.
No, that's fine.
No,
I'm married.
But you're right, Matt, and use them or lose them. But at the same time, these people are there to help you.
Right.
They're not going to help you if you don't push into it. Don't be discouraged. Don't fall back on, well, it's always sucked deal. If it's worth fighting for, it's worth fighting for.
It is.
There's no shame in it.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
Excuse me.
we're going to wrap things up, but if you have any questions or whatever, we'll be glad to help. You just post it in the comments. We can hook you up with somebody, give you a link or something. We're not VSOs, we're not experts, but we do have some experience in this wicked web that we've weaved over the years. So just leave us a comment and and don't forget to tell a friend, tell another veteran if you're out there to tune in. I think me and Ken's pretty exciting, pretty sexy too. But
I'm wearing my nice
anyway,
shirt to match yours today. We're doing the olive drab,
hey,
baby.
we coordinated, right? We planned all this. It's coordination, right?
This is that old school olive
OD
drab.
green. Yeah, OD green, right?
Yep.
Hey, like and subscribe again. Matt Cochran here with Ken Free. It's the Vet Files. Like and subscribe. Tell a friend. We're always here for you. Leave some comments down below. Thanks for watching.
Tune in, turn it up, hear the heroes speak. The Vet Files bring the truth every week. From the fight to the mic, it's a soldier's life. You're live with the Vet Files, real stories, real life.